Thank you, everybody, for coming this morning. Let's start the show. You got to forgive me. This is the first PowerPoint I ever used. All right. Now, for Buck Knives, you know, we all know how Pastor Hoyt was giving all the special knives and stuff for the servicemen in his church, okay? But most of you guys don't know that there was this tail gunner named Jack Bremerman, and he actually asked Pastor Hoyt to make him a dagger. And the dagger was for his wife, okay? Because he wanted to have some sort of protection for his wife. So I always thought that was kind of cool. But, you know, with all these beautiful lectures, you got to see how there's all kinds of cool buck knives. But right here, the 104. The 104 was a fighter. So right here, that was a fighter, okay? Now, Buck wasn't into fighting, and, you know, Buck is known for their hunting knives, okay? However, tactical type stuff, protection, that was really big. I mean, Pastor Hoyt wanted to give all these knives to protect our servicemen. And the Buck family bleeds red, white, and blue. That's why I was so sad with all the stuff having to go overseas, but they're bringing it back. But it's red, white, and blue in this family, okay? Now, there was a special company called Qualitech, and Qualitech was from Oceanside, California. Most of you have never even seen the symbol, but if you were in the CIA, the FBI, the SEAL teams, the Green Berets, the Rangers, you've heard of these guys, okay? And what they used to do is they did state-of-the-art sound suppressors. So that was really a big thing for them, and that made them get real tight with everybody. The main people for Qualitech is two guys. It was a guy named Harry Camphausen, and Harry is just this character of a guy who lives in, actually, Idaho now. He moved over here, but he's from Oceanside, and he used to own a pawn shop called Jerry's. So some of you guys that are from Oceanside, you'll remember that he had a pawn shop named Jerry's, and he was a master machinist, and he was just a genius all around. Then you have Mickey Finn. Everybody knows Mickey Finn because, you know, he's famed with M-9 bayonet. But it was him and Mickey, and all they did was all these cool things for the SEAL teams. This is the very first suppressed MP5. This was made for SEAL Team 3 at the time. And SEAL Team 6 was very interested in this, and this is them actually testing it, okay? This is Mickey Finn right here shooting a suppressed pistol. And here's a SEAL team member right here, back here. They were famed for their 22s. They call this a hush puppy, but they didn't only hush puppies. This is Commander Dick Marcinko. Commander Marcinko created SEAL Team 6. Right here's Wendy Finn. Wendy ran the whole department for Qualitech and then Frobus, okay? This is just talking, you know, obviously you see the Trident. What's so cool about the Trident, I don't know if you know about this, but the Navy SEAL Trident, the eagle bows down, okay? It's the only symbol in America that the eagle bows down, and that's for the fallen of the SEALs. Talking again, Commander Marcinko. Commander Marcinko talking to Wendy Finn. And there's Wendy. You can tell it's early 70s. There's him holding one of his favorite weapons. This is a suppressed MP5. If you read any of the Rogue Warrior books, you'll see what I mean. He loves that. The SEAL, again, testing MP5. I just thought that was so 70s, you know. Hey, man. All right. Commander Marcinko and Mickey Finn. And then here's their actual business license. That's in my collection. I just thought, man, that's kind of cool, you know. These are some of the suppressor parts. I got these pictures from Rick McDonald, who was a young machinist, 22 at this time period. There's one of the suppressed weapons that was made. This is Smith & Wesson. This is a video of the very first suppressed pistol that was able to work underwater. What happened is the suppressor is like on a car exhaust. It keeps stuff quiet, okay? Well, with the 22, it's no big deal. They'll still function. On a heavier pistol, they don't function. Qualitech invented this for the SEALs. So what you're seeing here is an actual SEAL team member. Harry Camp Halligan's filming, and you hear Mickey Finn talking with this SEAL Team 3 member, and I can't tell you his name. But he looks different now. This is almost 30 years ago.
What caliber is it?
9 mil. Tell me that's not cool. And it worked every time. That's why they went to Qualitech. Now, what happened is they also made this. This is the very first caliber. This is a 50 cal, okay? And the muzzle blast is tremendous on a 50 caliber. I don't know if you've ever. Oh, yeah. Sorry. I don't know if you ever have shot a 50 caliber, but without a muzzle brake, it will kill you. I mean, it's just the percussion's amazing, okay? They invented this for the SEAL team, and I actually have further pictures of the SEALs, and you can kind of see the cool van in the back. Now, this is called Dooley McCluskey's. This is in Carlsbad, California, and this is a very, very famous haunt for the Navy SEALs, okay? This table is the actual table where what happened is, they're making all these beautiful suppressors, and Buck's not really involved right here, right now, but actually they're not involved at all right now, except for Paul Boss. Now, what Boss did is, Boss is a heat treating genius, and we all know this, okay? Well, Frank Buck was real tight with Paul because Al Buck brought Paul into the heat treat. Well, those guys, they love to, race cars, and they love their liquor, and they love ladies, Frank was a hellion, and being a pre-son myself, I kind of get that, okay? But what's funny is that they used to hang out a lot. Well, the idea is starting to come right here. At this actual table, Mickey Finn sitting down with a few SEALs and Harry Camphausen. And he says, well, you guys want us to build what? And they said, hey, we want some knives. We have these K-bars, and we hate these K-bars. They rot, we just don't like it. We want something kind of cool. And Mickey says, okay. They go back to this bar about a month later, and Mickey shows up with three Jimmy Lyle Rambo knives. Okay, he bought 3 of them. And he lays these 3 knives actually on this exact table. I mean, I love that. He said, okay, guys, and this is SEAL Team 3 right now. Let me be specific. It's SEAL Team 3. He says, okay, guys, if I could do something to this blade, how would you like me to make you a knife? And one of the guys says, I think that we need to have some sort of anchoring point. And he draws it on a napkin. Mickey grabs that napkin after that, runs to the shop, and starts talking to his 2 buddies. Now, there's one, his name is Bob McDonald, and he was one of Mickey's childhood friends. And Bob McDonald was a genius. Actually, Randy Morton, who's head engineer here at Buck at that time period, said that Bob McDonald can make the impossible possible with a machine. He was so awesome that he made parts, brought it here, actually in El Cajon, to some of the machinists there, and they said they couldn't duplicate it. And Chuck said, hey, he went into their shop, at a later time period. Okay. This is the actual order. This is the order from Commander Coulter from SEAL Team 3 requesting. And I have copies of this for you guys. If you're uber nerds like me, you can have copies of this, but I have the actual ones. It shows that, what they want. They want it to have a grappling hook, aluminum, wood, bone saw, compass, all kinds of cool stuff. And Commander Coulter was commander of SEAL Team 3. Turns out, after talking to him, he goes, hey, Rich, do you know who that SEAL was? And I go, no, sir, I have no idea. He goes, that was me. I'm like, did you keep the napkin? And he's like, no. He goes, he'd always come up with cool ideas. There's a second page. What that was given to Chuck, okay, at the time. And he kind of held off on it a bit. Well, they rolled with it. the Frobus logo that everybody kind of recognizes. And Doug Olson did this picture. This is an actual copy of the picture he drew and went to a guy named Brad Stoddard, and Brad cleaned it up, okay? Well, long story short, they picked Frobus. What the heck Frobus? Frobus is, Frobus, it was substituted for the F word because Commander Coulter was a very good Christian guy, and he did not like to ever use the F word in front of his soldiers. None of them would cuss in front of him, which is kind of unique for the SEALs, to be honest, especially the ones I know now, okay, for the cussing part. But he would say Frobus instead. So the SEALs were handling dolphins, and this was at that time period. This is the early 80s. This is, the actual year was 1983 for this, okay? And, they thought, what would be so cool than to have a dolphin as the logo, okay? Whoops, I went the wrong way. Sorry, PowerPoint. This is Bob McDonald. This is Mickey's childhood friend, and then his young 22-year-old son. His name's Rick. Rick's now over 10 years older than me, and super nice guy. He was ultra religious, a good Christian guy. And there was a guy in the office. His name was John Holm, and he was in charge of security. And Rick remembers this guy specifically. He always had a Pepsi in his hand and a big old cigar. Okay. And Rick, it was real tough for Rick because he was making silencers and all kinds of cool stuff, but he couldn't tell any of his friends, so it was kind of a different situation for him. And when have you ever seen Frobus letterhead? I brought some unique stuff for you guys. This is one of the very first stamps for the Frobus. They made two sizes, a smaller one and a larger one. The smaller one was used in the future on different items. This is some actual drawings of the first generation Buckmaster. What happened is some unique situations here. I just threw that in. They called it actually eventually the survival package, but we're not there. I just want to throw that in there to show you some cool stuff. This was the very first one ever made, okay? Now, Paul Boss, he treated this, and Buck still was not involved in this project yet. Paul was specifically, because Harry Camphausen was like this with Paul, because anytime they needed some stuff he treated special for some of the cool stuff they made for the SEALs, SEAL Team 3 in fact, they made this. Now, at Qualitech, what's so funny is that they just had, they're still there at Qualitech, but they call it now Frobus. They just started this new company because of tax reasons. You can start a new company, so this is the beginning of Frobus. And they had all kinds of stuff there. They had explosives, they had machine guns, they had suppressors, they had rocket launchers. What the SEALs used to do is they would be right there in Coronado. They would bail from Coronado, go get their gear, and they would actually gear out of this place, okay? Now, Mickey and Harry came up with this too. It's not number 2000, it's not 2001 from 2001. They actually made that the real number. So if it said 00, that 1 represents what that was. This knife was actually given to Paul Boss after he did the project because Frobus owed him some money, and instead of doing that, they gave him the number 1 prototype. Now here's an example of one of the anchors. Now this anchor is so important because they wanted this crazy anchor, and it's like, why? Well, Commander Coulter told me that after they do a mission, instead of swimming out to the sub, like they'd have to do because their gear would always wash out, they wanted some sort of anchoring point, okay? So they would tie a rope to this, get their gear, and this would be in a sheath, okay? Right now they haven't developed the sheaths yet. They just have this cool knife, okay? There's the other side. You can see the Frobus. The big, heavy pommel. The reason for this, Commander Coulter said that when they went up to the sub, they had a specific code that they wanted to pound on the submarine so the sailors on the inside knew the SEAL team was on the outside. And they could actually get their gear, tie it up, drop it 100 feet in the water, go do their mission, come back, know where they put it, pop it up, inflate that Zodiac, and boom, off to the sub. Prototype ideas, a 2-piece lanyard holder, 1 piece. I brought all these for you today to watch, okay, or look at and hold. Rick McDonald, the young guy, he's the one who actually made those, and he also made the anchor pins and the handles. His father did the flat grind on the blades. Rick McDonald, these are just all prototype stuff, working, you know. This is from Rick McDonald, and he did the actual cross guard. Notice, you know, that the anchoring point right there. Now, there's a Navy SEAL that came back from a mission, and at Frobus, they had a fridge always in the corner full of beer. Now, don't get me wrong, these guys are not alcoholics. Their metabolism, they could drink 10 beers and they're still okay, okay? They just grab a beer, and there's this one SEAL looking everywhere. He's like, hey, where's the opener? Couldn't find an opener, and he actually grabbed this knife, okay? And Bob McDonald's sitting there, so there's some spots, and the SEAL got the beer. I wish I had one to show you. No, I'm kidding. And he opened it up, and Bob McDonald saw that, okay? And what's so cool about that is, remember later on, the M-9 bayonet, and they had a bottle opener? That was because of this one particular event that happened years before, okay? And after the show, I'll let you guys hold this, okay, and take pictures or whatever you want. I have the first, second, and third generation of the prototypes here. Now, they were experimenting with the quillions at the time, and this one's cast. They actually cast a few. They cast 7 of them to say, hey, man, can we make them cast them? You know, is that cool? And it didn't quite work out that well. So they just actually ground them still. Now, after Bob McDonald saw that SEAL do that, a few years later, he actually made one for a bottle opener. He thought, man, that's a darn good idea for the SEALs. That never went in production. These are, that's just a normal size pin in comparison to these cool prototype pins. I'm showing you that, you know, they experimented. This is all having fun. I'm kind of trying to be slow so you can read too if you'd like. Again, this is, you know, the famous Frobus stamp. And you can see the little variations here. This is a normal standard production. And then, you know, just kind of cool. This is uber nerdy stuff. Him explaining the 7 quillions. Now, this is the way the anchors went a different way. Now, what happened is SEAL Team 6, who dealt with these guys all the time, and nobody knew what the hell a SEAL Team 6 was at that time, because there was only a SEAL Team 1, a SEAL Team 2, and a SEAL Team 3. And SEAL Team 1 and 2 were on this coast, and SEAL Team, 1 and 3 were on our side, and 2 was on the other side, okay? And SEAL Team 6 said, hey, forget SEAL Team 3, man. We want some, but you got to do this a little different for us, because, you know, we're SEAL Team 6. We want to have, I'm skipping just a hair here, right here. We want to have a long knife, okay? We want a very long knife. So they did that. I just wanted one comparison here. This is just a comparison shot. The other is not that important. This is a standard, this is actually the SEAL Team 1 of 6, 3rd generation. This is that first prototype. You can see how narrow it was. They needed to make it bigger to support all the weight. This could actually hold 275 pounds. Actually, they tested it originally, and it was less, and they were able to make it even increase more with factory production. So this was a 10.5-inch blade. It was modular. They came up with this modular idea that rolled into the M-9 bayonet theory. I have just a standard Buckmaster pin there, just to show you, you know, it's kind of cool. This is all handmade. Again, Paul Boss heat treated this whole thing, okay? And Boss was real tight with them. And then Rick McDonald made this, and his dad, Bob McDonald, made that. This is a comparison of that particular knife with a normal Buckmaster. This is, you notice the pommel. Now, they wanted 3 different sizes. They want to take these things apart and do what they want for whatever mission requires, okay? Notice, oops, sorry. Notice there's all teeth still. It's all teeth. There's no scallops or anything. And notice this anchoring point. It's just unique. They were just mixing with it. This is number 2. Now, number 2 was a 6-inch, okay? There's next, you can see how small it is. I wish I had it. I ended up selling it and taking my children to Disneyland. I hate to admit that. But after all the research, I promised them, Leroy, please let Leroy in. He's so important for this project. Leroy is awesome. Okay, in comparison to a normal Buckmaster factory, okay? Now this is at the time this was the biggest. This is the biggest Frobus blade. I have it here for you. You can hold it. You can take pictures of it. Paul Boss again heat treated this, and Rick McDonald was specific making all these parts at that time, and it was still ultra hush. They didn't have a name for it. It was called the survival knife. But this was the SEAL Team 6 survival knife. Now there were 2 sets made for. One was made for Bob McDonald. They actually let him keep it. The second one was actually given to SEAL Team 6 to test, okay? They got it back after short testing. They put in their input. It was a short, not that long. And Bob's was stolen. So there's no questions asked. If anybody ever hears that there's an actual set and it has a 2001, you can email me or whatever. Now, Harry Camphausen had one of the long blades. He made, this is the 4th long blade they've ever made like that. And he also made this custom sheath. And Harry, who has been with this the whole time, but he's not the master machinist like Rick and Bob McDonald were, he focused on this sheath. But see, these people that I'm mentioning to you, most people have never heard of these people. And this history would have left if we didn't do the research. There's Chuck, and we're in Boss's office. You can see this is before Boss was retiring, and I was doing my research for this presentation for you all these years ago. There's Paul, we're discussing. He's remembering, hey, man, it was just kind of cool. These guys are like brothers. I mean, Paul and Frankie were so close, and then when Frank passed away, and Chuck was always with them, but Chuck was the nice guy. You got the Hellraiser son and then the nice, sweet guy. And thank God to Chuck for this. Now, here's a quick little story for you. This is the 2nd generation of prototypes. And the SEAL team was at Frobus, and they had a 3-inch piece of rope and a vise. And they asked somebody, and I can't disclose his name, CJ Buck, to cut the rope. CJ cut it, no problem. Hey, this is a buck knife, baby. We'll cut it. Then the SEALs are standing there at attention. They had like this unique thing that they did just for this for some reason. A SEAL went around, got some fresh salt water, poured it on that rope, and said, Mr. Buck, can you please, and stepped back and said, sir, can you please cut that again? Sure. CJ's 25. He can't cut it. So they say, sir, we need scallops. Now, how CJ got involved in this is Mr. Harry Camphausen owned the pawn shop. Guess what? He was a buck dealer, and he used to sell bucks, and he called Buck up. CJ is a 25-year-old kid at this time, okay? And Leroy started the custom shop with CJ, and CJ got the phone call. Hey, there's this crazy company in Oceanside. They want to make some survival knives. And so CJ got that call. So they kind of showed CJ, hey, they showed him the first prototype, and that happened. And then they're like, hey, we got to change it. Well, he said, hey, you guys, I'll check with our engineers and see if we can make this. And they were going to be like, $400, $500 a piece at the time. And I'll get more into this history. Now, this is from Rick McDonald. In the 2nd generation, there was only 10 made. There were 5 that were Frobus marked, and then there were 5 that were Buck marked, okay? And it has, this is, I'm sorry for this picture, but there's an XXXX. There's 4 X's and it says Buck, okay? So you have that, and you have that. Now, this one's a little unique because Rick McDonald, he's making these things, so he could do what he wants, okay? And this particular one was made out of titanium in this generation. All of it's titanium. Bob, his dad, learned at Bakersfield College that titanium was this really cool metal and all the unique properties of titanium. So there's 3 of these knives, these titanium knives in existence. And there's one of them. There's one of them. And the third one, see, oh, there. Okay, the 4 X's. Now this one was given to Leroy Reamer because Leroy was working with these guys now, okay? And again, it's all prototype stuff. You know, the Buck board said, hey, no way, we can't do this, you know. But in the 80s, man, people were clamoring for the survival knife. We want a survival knife. All us young bucks, I was 15 at the time, I wanted a Rambo knife, man. I saw Rambo a few years before. I wanted, that was that idea. That's why this is so cool. This is also a 2nd gen. Now, the only problem is, I mean, it's not like every single one was just like, they're working on stuff. So you can see the stamp's even different. It was etched. Okay? Here's one. This is from Joe Hauser from the archives. Again, 2nd gen, notice the pommel. Kind of a leather package. They didn't have the sheaths yet. They were working on that still. This one is the 3rd generation. And this one's the most like, they call this the survival package at the time. Notice it said Buck, stamped USA. The prototype seal, and they do it properly, 1 of 6. There was really literally only 6 made. I brought the number 1 here so you can also look at and hold. This trident was from Commander Coulter himself. So they wanted no markings. This was a big thing for the SEALs. They, if they went on a mission, they had to leave something behind. They didn't want anything on there. So there's originally no markings. This is just a regular anchor pin. Now, I picked this picture purposely in my publication due to the fact that this knife, all these people had something involved in this knife. The only one who really didn't was Joe, but he took the mantle and signed this. But see, I want to show you something cool here. A quick story. Bob McDonald actually started getting this blade blanked out to a point, okay? Rick McDonald, he did all these parts. Bob gave it to Leroy, okay? Leroy finished this thing up. He did all this. And Articuna from the custom shop, he cut out every single one of those on this knife, okay? Commander Coulter, he came up with the lanyard and pin idea, and I always had him right there by the pins. And then CJ, this was his project. Chuck, of course, was in charge. Paul Boss, he treated this whole thing. Randy Morton was the head engineer for Buck at the time. Doug Olson helped with all those blueprints you were seeing. He worked for Frobus, okay? And he also helped with the sheath. Rick McDonald, and then my buddy Harry Camphausen. Harry invented the sheath and figured out a way to hold a knife in that sheath, okay? Now, when I did my book, Bob McDonald's getting, sorry, I don't mean to mention it. Bob McDonald is getting old, and they told me he's going to pass away, so I was under the gun to get it done, and I sent this picture out to get signed. Well, Bob started signing 7 of them upside down because him and Rick were getting together. So that's very unique. There's very few of those out there, okay? Then here's number 2 prototype of 6. I just thought that was so cool. Now, they didn't say Buck USA, again, to show the SEALs, hey, this is unmarkable, and that's kind of where they're going with that. That's just a comparison of that particular SEAL knife, 3rd gen, compared to this. Now, in the meantime, CJ's begging still. He's going to these guys saying, hey, please, please, put this thing in I got an idea. I think we could do it. We're trying to get these costs down. And it didn't happen yet. That's just a comparison. Just 2 of them together. I just thought that was kind of cool. Now, they're used. These are used. They actually use these. It's not like, I've been asked, hey, why do you have that one with scrapes on it? Well, guess what? They use them. They tested them, and Paul Boss heat treated them, and it was just really, really a cool time. Now, the sheaths, you can't have a knife without the sheath, right? They actually developed the knife and went almost that far without the sheath yet, and they're working on it. So you had the first generation, and then the second generation. They're trying to bow this part out to kind of hold it in. Didn't work well. But then they're thinking, hey, these guys have gear, so they want to put gear on it. Then they went from that to aluminum one. Harry Camphausen made this from scratch, and I brought that here today, and I brought that here today so you could see that. Okay, these are prototype pouches. Then they did something. They made a two-piece Delrin clamshell variation. Okay, this is the third generation. Now notice how big that is. They went to this one eventually. They all have buck stamps because, see, they've been dealing, or buck buttons, because they've been coming back and forth here to Buck and saying, hey, you guys, this is just a comparison shot for you. This was a prototype, and that's a prototype, and it has Velcro there, Velcro there. This is a normal Buck small. To give you an example, this was the small pouch, okay, compared to the prototype small pouch. Made by the same company, by the way. You can actually see the machine marks. I mean, that's just really cool. And notice the Buck button. Harry got a whole bunch of those. He became really good friends with Chuck eventually. This is a comparison to the normal factory one and the SEAL Team one. You can see the clamshell. It's kind of cool. They got these two pieces and actually bolted them together. Pouches, prototypes, all kinds of ideas. There's the double Velcro idea. There's CJ from the 80s testing something for his bow. It was something him and Harry were coming up with, and I had that picture, and I'm like, dude, I gotta. All right. Now, with these sheaths, the SEALs are extremely inventive, okay? This is way before a Desert Storm or anything. And they came out green. They wanted different color ones. Then they also requested a wire cutter, okay? This is comparison. This is just a SEAL knife. Here's the wire cutter. Now, the SEALs requested this. This wasn't an Army thing at the time. The actual SEALs requested this, okay? There's some cool pictures. The stamp, and we could get real technical. I'm not going to. But it was exactly like the first generation sheath. The only difference is they made these different colors, okay? And they did very few of them. There's the very first, I just threw some stuff. You have to forgive me. I was doing this after my 12-hour workday. Okay, so CJ begged his dad, and Chuck's like, no, we can't do this yet. And the SEALs put in, they put in an order. They just put in an order for 2,500. 1 month became 2 months, became 3 months, and the SEAL, they started doing research and working back and forth, the two companies. Finally, they remembered that first picture, as in with Pastor Hoyt helping the servicemen and giving them these weapons to protect themselves. And this really isn't a weapon, it's a survival knife. It really, the whole time, it's a survival knife. And even when the SEALs had that third generation prototype, and the 1 of 6 and 2 of 6, it was called the survival knife. It wasn't called a Buckmaster. Well, he finally gave in to his awesome son at the time, who was so excited about this thing because they had all this stuff into it. It was 2,500 that wasn't filled. And he said, okay, we're going production. So here's the production. And this is the first one. It's called a 3-liner. Now, you always read, oh, there's only 2,500 of them. That's like a pet peeve of mine because it's not true at all. I even have that stated. Not 20. Okay, there was 12,000, and it's in hard numbers for us. And the first 600 of these had small pouches with a snap. So if you ever see the small pouch with a snap or the large pouch with a snap, that's the rarest pouch for production, okay? I'm going to throw you guys all the cool tidbits here. They call it the 3-liner, There's Paul Boss. This is here at the factory now. As you know, they don't let you take pictures in there. Well, Harry Camphausen asked Chuck, sir, can we please take pictures of this because this is ground shaking? And what I did for you guys is I have a copy of all the original pictures here for you to thumb through and look at, okay, so you can see all of them. I kind of threw a few in here. Here's Boss. And he when Chuck, This is his Rockwell hardness tester, okay, in his old office downstairs, and he had this skull. But when Chuck would come around, he'd actually put the skull away out of respect for Chuck, because Chuck didn't like that too much, okay? But man, he's a wonderful man. I mean, another heat treating story real quick. He moved and retired, and Ruger was having a problem with their new 45 they developed because the slide kept cracking. And they have all these metallurgists are telling them, hey, it's this, it's this, all these cool college guys and other people. Paul made a deal with them. He went in there, 4 hours, he solved their problem. He ended up with the new 45 with his name on it. He's that good. Now, when they made these production, this is right at production. Here's CJ, okay? He's 24 years old here. And I have the date. The date of the first production for the Buckmaster is November 15th, 1984. There's me in 1984. My buddy's almost 7 foot tall. I was in better shape back then, I think. All right. Now, this is Bob Lacarda, and he was assembly manager here at Buck Knives, okay? And these are people that nobody, you know, they're important to Buck, and Buck remembers them, but people over time. This is Jim Hagler. He's the manager of fabrication. This is Chuck holding the very first one offline, off the assembly line. This is just the typical package of what came back then. I just wanted to kind of throw that in there. This is the very first compass. It's called the Silva, and it's a Type 12. It's changed later, but in this it keeps it. These are the pouches I was telling you about. Then now the next variation is this patent pending. Okay, Harry was on him about this. Hey, we got to patent this. We need to get this handled because, you know, somebody's going to steal this. Well, he's not joking. I would say rip-offs from my documents I ended up getting, rip-offs started happening right away. I mean, right away. So that's when they said, hey, we're going to put Pat Penn. Well, this I call variation 2. And there's right about 1,000 of these made. And we were going to be careful with hard numbers for all this stuff, but I got as close as I could with all the stuff I researched. Then this, and here's the date. I have all the dates too. July, this is July till September 1985. Okay, this is the third variation. This is the one that the SEALs actually ended up getting. I was working on some stuff, and Harry asked Chuck if he could give me a whole bunch of documents, and he did. And some of the documents is like that cool video I just showed you. Okay, and then right here you can see the seal with. Now they finally got their order on June 20th, 1985. And Commander Coulter is the one who actually, so when people say, hey, this wasn't a seal knife, it was. It did officially replace the K-bar. It was switched over time right away because, you know, the knurling just ripped up these guys' hands. Matter of fact, even in this picture, you can see the little tape on there. And look at the old AR. That's cool. Oh, and of course. All right, so some SEAL team members from SEAL Team 3 actually thought it was kind of a cool thing, and this patch was made years ago, but it's one of the only patches I've ever found, and there's a lot of hidden stuff in there, so that's cool. That's why I had some of this stuff hidden, but you can see that. But you can see the eagle's heads, they're bowing, okay, and then the trident popping through. Kind of cool stuff. It's the only patch I've ever seen at the Buckmaster. Now, there was 13,008 estimated. I always put estimated because we actually had the hard numbers, but you know, we might be wrong. Okay, now they started changing. They went to a conventional blank tang at this time, and then they went to the forged blank at this time. The only way to tell on this knife is if you take it apart, okay? And there's a line right here that goes right through. That's the only way you can tell. I got this from Keith Harvey. He is a Buck Collectors member. He has the world's largest Buckmaster collection. However, I still have more prototypes in him. I always tease him because he only has prototypes because I sold them to him. And I love the guy, don't get me wrong. Okay. This is the very first date stamp. You know, you get these the date stamps because we have, you know, 3 dot, 2 dot, 4 dot. This was very important, and it was actually a military idea. okay? Then this is the very first black oxide. There's only, of that stamp, there's only 1,102 made. Then patent, they started putting a patent on the box, okay? And they put these stickers on, and we can kind of guess until 1985, probably 86, with the day-coded Buckmasters. I didn't have a box, Keith had a box, brand new, by the way. Then the compass. Okay. Then, right at that time period, exact same time period, January 1985, they came up with this knife. This is the prototype, okay? There was only 4 of them, and they were all handmade by Rick and Bob McDonald together as a team. They did this. The SEALs loved this one better. The only thing is they had a complaint in the future because of the grip. Whoops. Sorry, it did that to everybody else. Aren't those cool? It just did it by itself. It's possessed. There's a few key ones here I want to point out. Okay, sorry. So, these are all prototypes. I got this one from Paul Boss. This was a small-handled one. They were just testing it. This was one. It's just really cool how they were doing all kinds of different things. This, our kind friend John Forsman gave me a picture of this. I heard about this. Leroy told me about this. Leroy Reamer made this knife, and it was for a guy in Alaska. You want? How many I say? Yeah, how many? I didn't say it. Yeah, 12. Yeah. Sorry. I have all this knowledge I'm trying. These are the actual patents for this. They had different ways of putting in those pins. There, okay. Again, some prototype stuff. It was just kind of cool at the time. I just popped in a few pictures. This was, again, a prototype idea. All of them on the Buckmaster lights had this. That was the day code, okay? It doesn't matter when, even if they made them a little later, they still just use that day code. Comparisons. It's kind of cool. Okay, now this, out of production, Buckmasters, this is the rarest version. Notice the day code. It's in 1987. There's 936 estimated made with that day code. What's even more rare is the black oxide. There's less than 200 of the black oxide. They actually got the patent at that time, and some of these, those knives actually got shipped with that patent. But they were in the midst of doing some changes. This was in the Buck catalog, not catalog, excuse me. They were selling them at the Buck store, right, Joe? It wasn't just the Buck catalog.
Yeah, I think it was like a special order for.
Yeah, there's like 200 of them. They're called Wilson. They weren't made by Buck, but they're really cool. Sophie has one. That's the little box it came with, little examples. Danny Petretti, I don't know if you know Danny, but if you had your knife sharpened, more than likely Danny did it. Danny's been a long-time Buck employee here. He's an unsung hero, and he's a master when it comes to fixing everything. This is Danny's favorite knife. Then now we have the Variation 6. This actually has the patent, 184 U.S. patent 4622707, okay? This is the first variation of that. I call it just 6 because big pins, small pommel. Black oxide, more rare. The black oxides are all more rare, but they usually wear real easy. All these are bead blasted. The SEAL Team's ones and the beginning, the 3-liners were sandblasted at first. They started to have rust problems. They changed it to bead, and CJ is explaining to me that the sand would, on a micro level, would hit the steel and put little nicks in it, okay? The bead would make it nice and smooth. So they were doing that at this time. Now, this is the next generation of the 6. Oh, excuse me. I skipped one ahead. There. I didn't point that out. Small, it had small pommel. So you had big pins, big pommel, big pins, small pommel. Then you have small pen, small pommel. I have all this written down for you too, you can, if you want photocopies. Black oxide version. Now this is the rarest one of this variation. The scallops, for some reason, were changed to the other side. Small pen, small pommel. Okay, that's the last of those variations. Now we come to the custom shop. Leroy made every single one of these things darn near, except for what Joe's been doing lately over the years. But there's 205 of them. We actually could catalog them. The stampings, people are like, okay, what stampings? Guess what? They had 3-liners. They had the patent pending ones. They, you know, it's just amazing. We discovered that over time. We just found one recently that Joe and I have done all this research over the years. And it's so funny to see that, hey, the research was right. I like to make sure. And everything that I'm sourcing here, I'm not just telling you just off my head. I collaborated with 2 and 3 different people. Okay, Joe made this. Now, what's so cool about Joe is that obviously he's married to Marilee, but he has loved the Buckmaster as the very first knife that she gave him, and he's for his birthday, in fact. And this is one of Joe's beautiful knives. I mean, look at that work. It's one of my favorites. I don't know, Nick. I wish I did. I tried to. Okay, this is a high polish that Joe has done over the years. And Keith Harvey, again, that bottle opener idea. Joe put it together for me, and he made that knife. And this was a limited edition blade. They made a Bowie set that for a project from years ago, and I just thought, man, that's cool, because Bob McDonald gave me that. Now, Damascus. The person who made all these Damascus knives is sitting back there, Leroy Reamer, okay? Leroy was an expert with this. They could throw him stuff and say, hey, buddy, and he would just make it, okay? And there's only 27 of these. Now, this is the very first one that was made. Now, Joe, Paul had this in his collection, and it was sitting there, and he sent this blade down to Wild Bill to get cleaned up again, because Damascus does that after a while if it's not taken care of too well, and Paul just had it chucked somewhere. But Joe finished it up for me. Leroy made the blade, and Wild Bill, it's kind of cool. And then there's 2 types of Damascus. That's you have the bird's eye, okay? It's little circles. You see better on that photo, okay? Then you had the wavy. Now, there's been people that said, okay, what? I got a Damascus, it's number 5. Well, it turns out that all of them were G, number 5 for Mr. Gabrick, okay? And I call these the non-Gabrick ones, but they're duplicate, but they're wavy. And unfortunately, when they were stamping them, the gals put G still. So there's 7 like this that are duplicated. There's 2 G7s, but one's this version and one's that version, okay? I love that knife. Now, John Gabrick's very important, okay? And I want to just point this out because that knife wouldn't have been made without John. He has been a buck collector for years and years and years. And I just have a cool little write-up from him here. It's neat. It was his idea. He had a guy who was going to make it for him, and it never turned out. And then Leroy ran with it. Isn't that just beautiful? Okay. Here's Leroy. That's the only picture I had of you, forgive me. Wild Bill, I had both of them in there. So I actually needed Joe for this picture too. And, oh, of course, Nick and Sophie. All right. This is the titanium. It had a gold blade, black handles, a few changed up a bit, sometimes a high polish handle. Then the long blades. Joe actually made that one. I have the list. There's different sizes. I'll get in all that later. I got to make sure we have enough time here. Had that custom made. It's just gorgeous. That is technically the longest Buckmaster buck made. Stag. This is the rarest Buckmaster in out of the bunch. That's just something that was cool. A few years ago, I bumped into a guy that actually made those back in the mid-'80s, and he just had a whole bunch of them, so I picked them up from him. Just thought that was kind of cool. This was a cool project. Leroy made all these, and this knife, you can see this knife over here in the museum. It's gorgeous. These pictures do not give it justice. It's just gorgeous. It's a Harley knife, but it's a Buckmaster blade without the teeth, and it's one of the Quillian's that is not bent. There's Joe. Some other cool knives. These are some stuff that Joe has made over the years that I just thought were gorgeous. They're in particular collections. I brought a few of them here to show you. This was an upside down stamp. Now, this is a pretty dang rare knife. It was when they had the date code the first time around. The Pigmaster, you guys all know the pig sticker, and some guys told me I was nuts when I was asking $100 5 years ago for the normal pig sticker. And I said, dude, in a few years, I guarantee you, you're going to sell for $200 to $300. Well, I got my apology email not too long ago. And this was one of the prototype blades that was put together for Bill Porter. And Bill was kind enough to give me some of these. Zombies were real big. I found a person that coats stuff. I thought that was pretty awesome. Now came the titaniums. Now this became Knife of the Year in 1987. This is the very first one, the wood one. I had that one, and this one, and another one here. What happened is there was a hunting trip in Alaska. When you have your 110 always, it catches on stuff, or it can, okay? Especially if you transversed a lot of stuff up in the wilderness. Well, the whole idea was to have a clip, so it's nice and tucked. And this one is weird because all the clips are on this side on the titanium. This one was on this side because Rick McDonald made it back in the 80s, okay? And he found out that how I hold my knife, and there's been people that wanted it over the years, and Joe yells at me, you have a $1,000 knife in your pocket. It's one of my favorite knives. Just so cool. All these have a 4-dot, so it's your 110. I don't have to tell you guys, you're all Buckmasters when it comes to that. The different blade ideas. Bob McDonald milled this. Now, I'm going to point this out. This is a thumb flick. This was an idea. And our buddy Jared here from Canada, thank you for coming, I gave him a copy of the original drawings of the thumb flick being used, and they wanted to put the thumb flick. Frobis changed their name to Frobis 2 for this project, again, for tax purposes. Okay, these are all the cool prototype pictures. I have some of them to look at. I just want you to see some cool stuff. All those prototypes were marked on the bottom, and I actually have the list from Harry, so if one pops up, I can actually be able to look it up and tell you. Harry had this one in his collection, and 13's my lucky number, and he says, Rich, I want to give you something. And I said, okay, cool. He goes, I got 187. He goes, what numbers you like? I go, dude, you got 13? And he's like, yeah, I got 13. Here's an example of Mickey Finn using that thumb flick. Actual pictures here. These are all prototypes. I mean, There's John Holm, the guy with the cigar and a Pepsi. Look, he has a Pepsi right there. That's funny. This was their idea. So it didn't, I have pictures of it's in Mickey's BMW. It's funny. This is Mickey's boot in his pocket. You can go on this side or that side. One that Joe finished up for me, I had him put a BG-42 blade in that. Just some cool, this is some of the cool stuff. Leroy's been busting these out, and I'll tell you, Jared is smoking. He's just been making just gorgeous knives. These are prototype, and then just different cool knives, 1987, Knife of the Year. Again, something Frobis and Buck did in correlation together as a team. It's cool. The prototypes I love because who cares if it's miscolored or parts, who cares? It still has, different cool things. A blade laying around. This was my Christmas present last year, and I was shocked, and I had to put this in here. I got this knife, and it was in a big old sheath, and I pulled it out. I'm like, wow, awesome. That's awesome. And this was in the pouch, and I had no idea. It was a mini copy of a Buckmaster, and Joe made that for me as a gift. And this he was going to keep. He was going to sell it to somebody, but he said, dude, I had to give it to you because it was like a Buckmaster. Now, the 639 came out, and I have all the technical stuff on this for you if you want, and anybody can email me. These are the custom versions. This knife has gutted so many deer, elk, and bear, I can't tell you, as my sons can attest, and turkeys, as my children can attest to. Now, what happened is, in all this mess, and they're dealing with the SEALs, this is, they found out that the Army wanted a bayonet, okay? So the SEALs told them that. This is one of the prototype ideas. I'm going to show you this. This is kind of historically cool. The SEALs were complaining that they went to blow stuff up, and they couldn't blow two things up. This was SEAL Team 6, in fact. And this is a test of this that they designed specifically. Bob McDonald designed this for SEAL Team 6. Just take a second here.
This is a test of the Qualitech dual firing adapter. It's adaptable either to an M60 fuse lighter or the Mark 31 signal launcher. We tested initially with the no-nel leads off of a 100-foot roll, the largest size of no-nel. To determine if it actually did work, we have arranged some smokeless powder at the ends of the no-nel leads. And we'll go ahead and tape this down to keep the powder in place.
There he's filming.
We'll then assemble the dual firing adapter using a standard shotgun shell primer and the Mark 31 launcher. The non-L leads are inserted until they stop, and the clamping device is tightened down. When ready to fire, simply operate the launcher in the normal manner. Move up a little bit so you can get it all on the camera.
So up to this point, they were only able to blow up one spot. They designed this for the SEAL Team 6 specifically as a gift. Bob McDonald just came up with it. They were complaining about it when they went to have beers one night. There it actually is. That's the copies of it. That's, well, why I even have this in here is on this document. It says specifically that they did some really cool stuff. And they wanted them to know that they're doing stuff for the Navy. And they submitted a knife, this knife. This is what they actually submitted. Oh, thank you. Sorry. This is the actual knife they submitted. Now, remember that wire cutter idea? The military required that. That was one that they have many, many questions. I'm going to kind of go through this. A saw, a wire cutter. It needed a serrate through rope. There's CJ. Now, is John around? Because poor CJ is still wearing his buck tag here. Right there. There's his buck tag. Now, the guy who did the M-9 bayonet book said, hey, my gosh, that's the first knife they actually sent them for just to tell them, hey, we're a small company. We do stuff for a lot of people. You might not know us. Okay? And then you can see the Buckmaster influence. And the wire cutter. They had to get that wire cutter and the whole thing a little smaller. Now, here's 184 blank going into what that blade developed into. The very first M-9 bayonets that they did had this square. Now, they brought this knife. There's 3 of these, and there's more detail, and you can all get a copy of this later. They brought this to CJ, and CJ's like, dude, we can't do that. Probably bro. It was still bro in that day, okay? So they had to go like this, and it was much easier to machine it. Now, Paul Boss did all the heat treat for this, and Let me tell you, the tests were grueling. You had to twist the knife, you had to bend the knife, you had to drop the knife. There's all kinds of things. You had a saw, all kinds of cool stuff. Now, I've been in arguments with the M-9 bayonet guys because they say, hey, there's only 50 of these ever made. That's not true. There were 55. Our buddy Leroy back there actually made that blade, okay? And there were 55. Frobus requested, and at this time they became Frobus 3 for this new project, again for tax purposes. Qualitech's still running, Frobus 1, Frobus 2, Frobus 3 now. And what happened is, here, let me just do this real quick. This is a drop test. And the 5 that they held back, this is one of them. So anytime these guys tell me, hey, you know what, there's only 50, here's one of them. And I got one of them here that was tested. And it was given to me by Rick McDonald. And he has one. His father has one. Doug Olson has one. And Doug sent me his, and I got pictures of that. But here's one of the 5. Bob McDonald talking.
Bayonet drop test. The bayonet should be dropped from a minimum height of 4 feet onto a concrete surface.
Nobody's ever seen
The
this.
test should be conducted in the following orientations: point down, point up, and horizontal. Then the test shall be repeated with the scabbard attached to the bayonet.
Now, all you knife enthusiasts, look at this.
This line is at 4 feet.
He goes higher. Just that impact. This is that actual Frobus and Polytechnic officer. I love this. I love his boots. He's in Oceanside, California, in boots all the time. I was only an hour from Bakersfield when I grew up. I know how it is. Just a little bit more here. After all those
Appears to be
drops
no
on that
damage
concrete.
whatsoever to either the screwdriver point or the locking latch.
So nothing's shit,
I see no
nothing.
physical damage whatsoever. The point is completely intact and still sharp.
Paul Boss.
It doesn't appear to be broke or bent any at all.
Sorry. Okay, so Paul used to grab these blades. And he would go to Camp Pendleton, okay? And I sat with Paul for a long time, and this was a tough thing to do, man, because of all the crazy stuff you got to do with twisting, turning, all that. Well, Paul would see a tank roll by, and he'd get these blades and have them marked and chuck them under the tank and see how that weight and torsion would affect these things. So Paul's awesome. He's a heating genius. This is my XM9 number 29 right here, and then this was, you can see they're duplicates. This was a Doug Olson's. He was stoked I had 2. They did like a prevention to. This was one of the original bayonet designs, but for the sheath, but it weighed too much, and you see the prototype wire cutter idea. This is what they came up with. Doug had this idea, and it ended up rolling later, but not with Frobus. This is cool, this latch system. It's exact latch system from the M7 with my SEAL Team 1 of 6 knife. There's only one of these made here at Buck. It had a 40. There's a story behind this, real quick. When I was doing all my research, I saw, wow, M9 bayonet Damascus number 40, Mickey Finn. Well, long story short, Mickey ordered this for Harry Camphausen as a gift. And Leroy Reamer ended up completing that gift for him and gave it to him. But it's awesome. It's number 40 because Harry was born in 40. You can see just the waves. It's amazing. That's with Paul Bosses, and Paul, of course, he treated both.
Through the roof of a car.
No problem with the Buckmaster.
Harry was filming this, and CJ's like, "Man, I just wish you had that video." I go, "Oh man, you have no idea." He called me the other night, and he didn't know I had that. All right. Now, speaking of CJ, I had a great idea just a while back. This rolls into Karen's. When Ron was alive, one of my good buddies up here that I go shooting with all the time, he's real tight with the SEAL teams and stuff, and super nice guy. He's like this with Ted Nugent. And he was saying, hey, Ted wanted a knife. Well, we ended up making that knife, and then poor Ron passed away, so I wasn't able to show him. We got, we did this. It was a fundraiser. There's 2 knives made, the one for Ted Nugent and then this, and we did the auction for Jess. These are some of the ones that Karen gave me permission to make for my children. We did a zombie knife because there's a place called Silverwood here that we went with Karen and Heath to last year, and hey, let's do a zombie knife. They're kind of cool. Zombie Punk, and then Karen. Thank you.